everybody. I hope I'm live now. So it's great to be here today. I've had a fantastic morning already, and I hope that you're enjoying the event so far. So for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to be sharing my top tips with you to start crafting a CV that's going to get noticed. And remember, you can catch up with this video from tomorrow if you miss anything that I'm going to say, but I'm going to kind of give you 5 top tips which happen to all begin with R. So the first one that I'm going to talk about today is reflection, and how important it is to reflect before you start crafting that CV, and really think about doing a strengths and skills audit. So having a bit of a big brainstorm all about yourself and your experiences and your skills and your strengths, and trying to work out the direction that you're heading in, because it's really important to get clarity on what you really want to do next, so that you can define and refine your CV for that particular role. We know now that it's really important that you're tailoring your CV to that role. So my first tip here would be to gather as much intelligence as you can about yourself. And I think this is particularly important for people who perhaps have had a break and feel a bit divorced from the workforce or from what they did, say, a few years ago. So try and see if you can find information about yourself. So, you know, old client feedback, your appraisals, LinkedIn recommendations, emails from colleagues, anything in your portfolio that might help you remember some of those achievements and relationships that you had with people. So think about the resources that you might have around you to get that feedback, and asking people to describe you is really useful as well. So colleagues, friends, family, to give you that feedback about yourself, to give you a bit of a boost to start thinking about what you can say. If you're feeling stuck, sometimes the free online personality tests can be quite useful, because they can sort of throw up keywords where you can connect with your characteristics and your work style and your strengths. So that's another little tip from me, is if you just Google some of those tests, they can be quite useful in igniting something in you there. So through doing these things, you can start to build your personal brand, which I touched on in the other session, and there's also a guide available in the swag bag for you to start working on that. So my second tip is you need to make it relevant. So you have to make sure that your CV ticks the boxes for that role, but that doesn't always mean that you have to rewrite your whole document. So the key things here are: make your personal summary a kind of mini supporting statement for that job. So it's really linked and tied in to that business, that industry, that culture, and that job role. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. The first third of your CV is where you want to make the most impact. So highlight what you want to be seen there. And some people, if they've had a break, might choose to use a bit of a skills-based CV, as well as a chronological part of their CV, to make it clear their sort of breadth of experience if they've had a break. So mirror some of the language that's used in the job information or that particular industry. You don't have to change everything, but just have some of those keywords in there, and ensure that you highlight your experience and achievements that actually matter to that particular role. You might want to, for instance, look at your job titles, and if they've been quite unique or niche, you might want to think about adjusting those slightly so they fit in with perhaps the new direction that you're moving in. Ditch anything that's unlikely to be irrelevant. So there might be a training course that you did that was very specific to a certain role or industry that might be taking up space on your CV. You don't have to put everything in there. Hobbies and interests, keep personal interests in there if they add some value to the reader and to the role. Now you need to make it readable. So your CV often is seen by a robot first now through applicant tracking systems. So they tend to deal with volume recruitment, and for businesses that want to streamline their recruitment processes. More and more businesses are starting to use these systems. But they can scramble your data. So avoid text boxes, tables, and PDFing your documents, because you might fail at the submit stage because it can't read your data or your details. Utilise keywords from the job information. So applicant tracking systems will have a function where the recruiter can put in keywords that they want to pick up on. So have a think, if you were recruiting for this role, what are the main things that I'd be looking for? And add some of those keywords and terminology into your CV. So I think skills and the language and sort of adjectives rather than personal characteristics, those are the things that they're going to pick up. You can't ever fully predict an applicant tracking system. Different companies use different systems, and you don't know which level of functionality they're going to be using, but you can do those small things to help yourself get through the first stage. So you want to make it readable to the human as well, so you need to make it interesting. So bring it alive with evidence rather than a list of tasks. I do see a lot of job descriptions as CVs, if I'm honest. So you know, they're sifting hundreds of applications at the moment. You want to make their job easy. You want things to jump out at them that are relevant. So formatting is also key. So I've supplied a sheet of 10 top formatting mistakes to avoid, also within our resources on the stand. So please do take a look at those. Nice little checklist there of things for you to avoid. So number 4 is recognising your value on your CV. So a lot of people I work with struggle to think about what they've achieved or the value that they add. And I think one of my little tips is try and flip that around and think about what would happen if you didn't do your role or elements of your role, or approach things in the way that you did or do. What would the impact be then? And that sort of reverse psychology can actually come up with some impact and achievements and values for you to think about putting in there. And remember the soft and people skills as well. So what is it about your approach that builds relationships or leads a team successfully? You know, what you're actually doing, what are the characteristics there? Because that's really nice to have on your CV to bring it alive and bring some personality in there. So use data, use metrics, people dynamics, team outcomes, personal development, and highlights that you have had out of your career to evidence what you've put into a role and also got out of it. Trying to put links in can be helpful. So any articles that you've appeared in, PR, business social media presence, awards ceremonies. You know, if there are links available, then put them in, because again, that brings it alive and demonstrates that you've really done those things and that you believe in yourself enough to put them on there. And also sometimes I use sound bites on CVs or addendums to CVs from managers and colleagues and clients as well. So that's something you might want to think about to put on your CV too. Number 5 is keeping it real. So your CV needs to reflect you and your uniqueness. You need to feel comfortable with what you've written because you might need to talk about it at interview. And when I help clients with their CVs, I'll often mirror their language back to them, and that's what we use in their document and their job search tools and LinkedIn, etc. So your personal summary is a great way to express yourself and your values and your connections with the role and that industry, how you add value, and perhaps a line that really embodies who you are and how you get things done and your approach to things. So that's where you can really sort of personalise, I think, particularly to the role that you're applying for. Don't forget the things that might count. If I had £1 for every person who didn't put their language skills on their CVs, for instance, because they think they're irrelevant, but they might be relevant. You know, that might be something really useful to that company. It also shows a level of skill or, you know, working perhaps in other cultures. So put those things on your CV because they can be useful, and it might be something that you have beyond the next person. Voluntary and community projects are great for showing personality and involvement. Relevant interests, so you know, if your lifestyle you know, is cycling, and you go for a cycling a job in a cycling manufacturer or something like that, you know, there's a clear link between your lifestyle and what they make, to use that as an example. Any side hustles that you might have that are really relevant and demonstrate other skills that you have too, you know, if there's not a conflict of interest perhaps. I think if you want to be creative with your CV or the way that you apply for jobs, you can be, and I think it may get you noticed, and you probably just need to follow your instinct on that. But yeah, you know, try and put some uniqueness and distinctiveness into your CV and certainly your covering letter. The last thing I guess I want to say is, to be real, I think you need to be unapologetic about career breaks. I hope that we've moved on with that particular question that gets asked a lot about whether to put one on there on your CV. Absolutely, and I think you can say as much or as little really about your break. Just make it as relevant as possible. And if you're concerned about how something might come across on your CV, then I would say try and fill in the gaps for the recruiter so they don't fill it in for you. Sometimes I get that question from my clients about, well, I'm not sure about this, or I'm not sure I want to say this. But actually, if you're not sure, I think it's better to be as honest as you feel comfortable, so that people aren't making up their own story, perhaps, about your career history. So really, those are my 5 top tips. So that was reflect on who you are and where you're going. Keep it relevant, keep it readable to the bot and the human. Recognise your value and get help perhaps to recognise that, and to keep it real. So has anyone got any questions that they would like to ask me, and I'll happily answer them now, or you can pop over and see Becky and I on our stand, and we're here all day to answer your questions. Don't think I've had, oh, did you say not to, thank you, Rachel, did you say not to put in a PDF? Yeah, I would advise, unless an application process or recruiter are asking you specifically to upload in a PDF, I would avoid it and submit it in Word. Annie, can you give any advice if you did not leave on good terms after leaving? That's not something I would necessarily refer to in the CV, but I think that's about being comfortable with your own narrative about that within an interview. So that's something that you might want to think about, and that I often help my clients work on, I guess, their story, if you like, and making that feel comfortable to themselves. I hope that answers that question. Emily, if you're having a career change, how can you reflect this best? Sometimes that is about using a slightly different format for your CV, so perhaps focusing on your core skills in the first 2/3 of the first page of your CV, where you can bring your broader experience, but align it to the industry or role that you might be pivoting into. So that's really helpful for making sure that the recruiter is seeing what you're offering first, rather than what you know, seeing the gaps there where it doesn't quite link up. If you're getting help for CV writing, how to research who to use and reasonable costs. Okay, yeah, there's lots of CV writers out there. If you want to have a chat with me separately, Rachel, I can talk to you about that and things that you might want to look out for. Well, I'm a company founder and want to know how to present myself as an employable person now. That's all about bringing in your transferable skills. from your own company, which makes you very, very employable, and just making it very relevant to the job content of the role that you're applying for. I hope that helps you. I think that's all the questions that I've got for now. And please, yeah, please come and chat to me individually over on the stand. That's great. Thank you so much, everybody. Hope that's been helpful.